Okay, so here we are, all you brave people who have come to Sravasti Abbey where you can't have coffee. Yeah, and I think it's really wonderful that you have interest in monastic ordination. You know, it's quite a precious thing, and I imagine that you also have some doubts and some questions about it and what in the world's going on. And so we will be discussing these. So we'll have, usually at the beginning, this session, I'll give some kind of talk, and then we take a break, and then we'll have a discussion afterwards. And I really encourage you in the discussions to be as open as you can, because as we're open, we develop a quality called transparency. In other words, we stop being embarrassed by what we think, or ashamed of what we think, or, you know, all of that kind of stuff. Because we realize that, first of all, everybody is kind of in the same boat, and people understand what we're going through. And second of all, the people who come here, we're all trying to develop bodhicitta. So, you know, we're not the disciples of who lives in a big white house. We're not his disciples, and we aren't looking out to criticize people and blame them and accuse them. You know, we're all trying to cultivate love and compassion for everybody. So we want to develop a feeling of trust within the group, because that's how we can all grow. Yeah, and we really learn from each other, because everybody kind of has, in many ways, the same things going on inside. Yeah, and so what somebody else says, you register, oh yeah, I've had that too, or I have it now, or I will have it. Yeah. Yeah, and then people also share how they deal with different things that come up when you're ordained or when you're thinking of ordaining, and so we can learn from each other. Yeah, and that's an important thing about being a sangha, okay? And when I use the word sangha, I'm referring to the monastic community. Many lay teachers now, they don't like the things Asian so much, but they like the word sangha. And they want to call their own communities sangha. Actually, the sangha refers to the monastic community. When we talk about all the Buddhas, we call it the four assemblies. And this is what the Buddha himself said, that he was not going to pass away until it was established. And so the four assemblies, male and female fully ordained people, and male and female lay people who have refuge in the 5 precepts. And that's the, you know, when you have those 4 groups of people, then Buddhism is really established in a place. Yeah, so it's, yeah, we're all learning from that. Yeah, so I also encourage you to tell me what you want to learn. Yeah, I cannot read minds, so if you have certain questions, you know, please just tell me, or write them down on a slip of paper. You can put them here and stack them up. And, yeah, and yeah, I'm happy to answer questions, because that way I know that it's becoming meaningful for you. Yeah. Okay. So, any questions so far? Anything? Doubts? Yeah. No. Okay. So, we'll start. Do you know the refuge and bodhicitta prayer? I hope. Yeah. So we'll do that. We'll do the 4 measurables. Yeah. and then we'll have a few minutes of silence, meditation. We'll cultivate our motivation. And then the first talk I always give in this course is about the Buddha's life, because everything started in terms of this world. It started with the Buddha, but the teachings, the Buddhas have gone on infinitely, okay? So it's nice to have that grounding in where everything came from, and then a little bit about how things developed and how Buddhism spread and the different things that had to be done to adjust the Dharma and especially the monastic precepts to fit the culture where Buddhism spread. Yeah, and you know, as you get into it, you'll really see that this is one of our challenges, bringing the Dharma to the West. Yeah, because it's a different culture. Yeah, and for example, I mean, I started out in 1975. The Tibetans were, you know, had not been refugees for very long. Everything was in Tibetan, yeah. So you went in and, what's going on? And your teachers spoke, you know, some kind of English, and you learned to understand that kind of English. And then other times you had teachings with translators. But whenever you did chanting, everything in Tibetan, yeah? And you're trying to figure out, what does it mean? What am I saying? Yeah, and why are we doing it in Tibetan? And so on, yeah? So, you know, how to put things into our culture, yeah? But the challenge is maintaining the purity of the Dharma, yeah? Because we cannot change the Dharma. I want to make that clear at the beginning, yeah? When the Buddha taught the Dharma, he taught the path to enlightenment. If you have another path to enlightenment that you think is better than the one the Buddha, you know, followed and explained, then go do your own thing, okay? But we're relying on the Buddha's teachings here. And the teachings, you know, the teachings lead to the goal, you know, because we can see 25 centuries of people who have followed them and who have actualized them. So there's, as they say, proof in the pudding, yeah. So we want to follow that tradition. But the cultural aspects, we need to change, yeah. Okay, and one of the chief cultural aspects is gender equality, yeah, because the cultures that Buddhism was born into and followed, you know, the social structure was quite different than what we have now. And if we try and import that social structure into 20th century America, you're gonna, you know, it's gonna push people away, yeah, except all of the Christians who want to be trad wives, you know, and trad husbands, then, you know, they'll love it, you know, except they already do it in Christianity. They're not gonna come here, yeah. So that's one thing that we have to modernize. When we talk about different precepts, then we see there too that we can't, they don't really, some of them, you know, are just apply perfectly to our lives and our culture. And others of them, you know, for example, we have a precept that in the morning, when you don't throw your chamber pot. You know what a chamber pot is? You don't throw your chamber pot over a fence without checking on who's the other side. So I keep that precept perfectly. Yeah, and I imagine you do too. Yeah, because I don't think in the morning who uses a chamber pot nowadays? Okay, oh, you do? Um, yeah. So, yeah, so, we have to look, what's the purpose of that precept? What was the defilement that the Buddha's trying to get us to look at when he set down that precept? So what do you think it is? What's the problem about throwing your stuff over the fence without looking?
Consideration.
Huh?
Consideration.
Yeah. It's consideration for others, isn't it? Yeah. That we don't own the whole environment. We can't just go and do whatever we feel like whenever we feel like it, because we share the space with other living beings. Yeah. And we want them to be well and happy, because who wants to live with a bunch of miserable sentient beings? It's no fun. So when, His Holiness says, if you want to be selfish, be wisely selfish and take care of others. Because if you take care of others, you're considerate of them, then that comes right back to you, and your own life is more peaceful. Yeah? When we lash out at others, and is anybody bothered if I use Donnie as an example? Anybody gonna take out their tomatoes and throw them at me? Because some people don't like this, and they say, you're talking about politics. When I talk about him, I'm not talking about politics. I'm talking about ethical conduct, and I'm talking about common etiquette that everybody values across cultures. Okay, so consideration for others is one of them, isn't it? Any culture you go to, and you have to figure out when you're in another culture, what does consideration for others look like? Okay, because okay. I said we'll start with prayers. I often get kind of involved, but yeah, you just have to get used to me. But consideration for others looks very different. Like in I think it was like 1908, a young husbandman who was a British military guy, because there was this whole contest between Russia and India in Central Asia around that time. Everybody wanted to get their guys into Tibet, and so the British went in, and young husbandman came in with his whole troop of, British people, very, kind of upright and proper, except the ones who aren't. Yeah, but, okay. So the Tibetans were lining the streets, when they came in, and the Tibetans were clapping. And the British thought, wow, they approve of us, they like us, they're glad we're coming in. Because in Western culture, you clap when you like something, yay, okay? Well, in Tibetan culture, you clap to scare away the demons. So that's what the Tibetans were really looking at the British soldiers as, yeah. So, there was a total miss, Another thing, when the British started talking to some of the Tibetans, the Tibetans tend to be quite polite, and the way you show politeness is by sticking out your tongue, lasso. You kind of stick out your tongue and inhale a bit, lasso means yes, and you're like this, lasso, yeah. Well, the And so the Tibetans were, showing kind of some respect. But the British thought, oh, they're so rude. They're sticking out their tongues at us. Okay? So just people totally, with different cultures, different meanings. Yeah. And I even found it when I lived in Singapore, because in Singapore, people will ask you a question, but they're really telling you what we're going to do. So, it came so obvious to me. I was walking with one friend on one side of the street, and she said, "Shall we cross the street?" And she was waiting for me to answer. She was already going there. Okay, so I realized, no, it's you don't give orders, you ask it as a question, but people understand it as this is what we're going to do. Okay. Similarly, when you go to Singapore, if you're driving somewhere, how many times do you text? Yeah. Oh my goodness, we're leaving. Okay, 5 minutes later, we're on our way. 5 minutes after that. We're getting closer, 5 minutes after that. We'll be there in an hour. 5 minutes, maybe not 5 minutes, sometimes there's 10, between a text. And it's just, texting the whole ride, right, yeah? And, in America, boy, you wouldn't do that because you'd probably get pulled over if the cops saw you. And, it's quite dangerous. Okay, so there's these cultural things, and coming back to what we're doing here is, we have to see what is culture and what is dharma. Yeah, because we don't want to change the dharma, but we will have to change some cultural things. Okay? But we're not going to criticize another culture because of what they do, because our culture, from another viewpoint, probably looks just as silly. Yeah. But you get used to it. I grew up with the little proverb, maybe some of you heard it, when in Rome, do as the Romans do, okay? And so when I went for the full ordination to Taiwan, I had been living with the Tibetans for almost a decade, over a decade at that time. And I had just gotten used to sitting cross-legged for long periods of time, because that's what the Tibetans do. You sit down and you're there for a long time chanting. So I had finally mastered sitting for a long time. Then I go to Taiwan, and you don't sit very much, you stand. So all the prayers are recited standing, and you stand for hour after hour after hour. And this was in, where was it? It was in Kaohsiung in southern Taiwan. Very hot at that time of year. My feet were swelling up. I had never been in that kind of heat. Well, I grew up in Southern California. I knew what heat was, but this heat was really hot, and it was wet, the humidity. And I had to get used to standing for many hours, because, I wanted to sit down, but when you're getting trained, you don't sit down when you want to unless you're going to faint, in which case maybe sit down first, or faint and then they'll faint. Yeah, but some people fainted at that time. Now it's usually not quite like that, although the three of you are going to Singapore, and you know, you get used to Singaporean culture and they have fans and everything, but it's hot and it's humid. Yeah. Okay. So we'll run across, you know, across those kinds of things because you're here, and you know, some things we do Chinese way, sometimes we do some things we do Tibetan way. Then, you know, kind of the basic way we do things is, you know, our own culture. But of course, we all come from different cultural backgrounds, don't we?
Right.
Yeah. And we have quite an international group here at the Abbey, including, yes, she told me these are the first EMLers this year. Okay? So the one that says my first Teddy, the big one on the right, yeah, he came from Germany, but he was originally from America. Yeah, and then his family moved to Germany, and then he came, you know, he came back here. The middle one, you know, is German. Okay. The blue one is Singaporean. The green one, the green frog, I'm not sure where that one is from. It might be Israeli, it might be Palestinian. We don't know which one it is. Yeah. So, yeah, how are they gonna, you know, the American with the Israeli, although they get along, the American with the Palestinian, you know, we'll have to keep an eye on those guys, make sure they, yeah. But that comes up too in our discussions and the way we live together, because we have different backgrounds, yeah. And but it's personally speaking, I love the fact that we have people from different cultures and different countries. Yeah, to me, that makes the community very strong, and it makes the community very open. Yeah, because the one, you know, when people talk about patriotism, I'm not somebody who waves the flag a lot. I mean, a flag is a flag. Yeah, I'm pledging allegiance to a piece of cloth. I never understood that in school. But anyway, you know, what really makes me happy to be an American is when I'm coming back from a foreign trip and I'm standing in the line to, you know, for them to stamp me in that I can come back. And I look back at the line behind me from the plane, and it's people from so many different cultures, all holding American passports. And I love this, yeah. Just the fact that there's different people from different places coming together, yeah, from different backgrounds. And so I have that attitude very much, you know, towards what we're doing here, okay? Questions so far or comments?
Why will the different people from different cultures make the community very strong?
Why does it make the community strong? Because it opens our mind to the fact that people are different and have their own way of thinking. And one of the strong points of the Buddha's teachings is that the Buddha teaches according to the disposition of the disciples, and he takes into account, you know, what inclinations people have, what their culture is, how they think already, and he teaches according to that. And so the fact that there's different cultures and backgrounds, that really reinforces to us one of the strong points of the Buddha's teachings, and it encourages us to be open-minded. And if we want to benefit sentient beings, which is why we're here to start with, then we have to be open, and we have to see that different people have different ways of thinking, and to respect them all, even though we may not agree. And so I know, personally speaking, one of the things that I really liked about the Dharma was that it was very open to other religions, and I didn't get any threats. Nobody was threatening me with hell if I don't believe Buddhism. And I don't know, we've all probably had different experiences, but I have some kind of karma with born-again Christians, especially on long airplane flights. We're usually seated right next to each other. And, and then also, because I grew up, my family was Jewish, but not religious. But the community where we lived was Christian. And, just this thing of people forcing their religion on you, it just, it really turned me off. And so Buddhism doesn't do that, And there's no threat that if you don't believe you're going to hell or anything like that. There's other reasons you go to hell, but not this one. Hopefully we don't create those other ones. But, so, there's a very open thing about, let's get to know how people think, and what kind of teaching fits them, and what kind of teaching is not really suitable for them. Either because of, their own aptitudes, their own dispositions, their own interests, and Okay, so maybe we should start with the prayer. I should also warn you before we do the prayers that one of my first teachers, Zopa Rinpoche, for you, those of you who know him, he would start on something and go on and on and on. The talk would have a title, and about the first 3/4 of the talk was your motivation, and then a quarter was kind of towards the title, maybe not, And all ideas of time were out the window, except the later the better. Don't start teachings when people are awake. Start them late at night. Yes. You didn't know Rinpoche?
I don't think so, no.
Oh, you didn't? Okay. Yeah, you would remember if you did. So I am a disciple of my teacher, and so sometimes I'll go off on different strands, because that's what comes out of my mouth. So we have a format, and then we stick by it to some extent. Another thing I learned from Rinpoche is, as soon as you have a plan, you know what will not happen. Yeah. So be flexible. And this is actually, a very good teaching, because when we have a very fixed mindset of, okay, it is organized like this, and it's supposed to be like this, and then it changes, yeah, then, yeah, that's what happens. My world's falling apart, Or somebody dies, somebody young dies. It's like, wait, that can't happen, yeah. Or all sorts of things, As soon as we have a very rigid concept of something, we start knocking against reality, okay? And when my mother also had a slogan, don't knock your head against the wall. Any of your mothers say that? Yeah, it's good advice, Don't knock your head against the wall, because who's going to get damaged, you or the wall? Yeah, the wall's going to win. So, yeah, Donnie could have used this one. Don't start a war with Iran, But, really holding very fixed conceptions it brings so much stuff. But we have a lot of them that we don't realize as being very solid conceptions until we bump into them, We bump into a wall. Oh, not everybody thinks like me. Oh, not everybody wants this the same way I do. Or not everybody doesn't want this the same way I don't want it. Yeah. And so often, our conflicts with people, are because of this. And also, as you practice Dharma, what comes up in your mind very often is stuff that you learned when you were young, that, when you're little kids, whatever adults tell you, you believe. We don't have much discriminating awareness as little kids, You just accept it. But some of the things that adults told us when we were little are garbage, They're not true. Because, for example, parents get angry at their kids because parents are doing their best to stay afloat, and the kids are all, running around screaming, I want this, give me that, And so parents lose their temper. When parents lose their temper, what do they say to the kids? You blah, blah, blah. Insult them. What the do you think you're doing? You're never going to amount to anything in this life. You spilled your milk. You can't do anything wrong. Right, you flunked your spelling test in first grade. How are you ever going to get into a university? You never will. You're going to amount to nothing. And you're 3 years old, maybe 5, maybe 7, maybe 9. You just take it in and you think, oh, that's who I am. Yeah? And then you believe it. And you go through your life and you always keep knocking against certain things because you have a certain concept that's totally wrong. Yeah? You come into Buddhism and you hear, you have the power, you have the potential to become a fully awakened being. And you go, oh yeah, me, forget it. Yeah, I can't do that. Or you're trying to learn how to do the drum or how to do, there's a special way to do the drum and to ring the gong and everything, and like, I keep botching it up. I'm not going to amount to anything, just like my parents said, because that is buried deep inside, and it comes up in the middle of your Dharma practice. And so it's very important to look at what you're thinking and what those concepts are and in what situations they arise and how they cause problems and how they are not true, and being able to look at things that you were brought up with. Sometimes it's ideas even about certain religions, ideas about certain people from different races or different cultures, and this was the way your family talked, and you thought this was true, and then you come to Buddhism and you're trying to develop love and compassion for all sentient beings, and your prejudice goes bling, and like, well, all sentient beings except this one and that one and the other one, okay, who look like this, that, and the other, okay? And then you have to step back and go, wow, what kind of idea is that? I didn't know I even had that kind of bias. Because when you're with a group of people who share that bias, you don't even notice that you have it. When you're part of the majority culture, this is just the way it is. It's, reasonable, it's rational, this is the way everybody should be, And this is the same thing that, the colonialists who went and colonized other countries, this is the way they thought and why they were imposing their culture on another culture that didn't really want it. So, we begin to see these kinds of things and confront them in ourselves, because we really are holding love and compassion for each and every sentient being. It's interesting, in the New York Times, there's an article now about, it's a book review about people who thought that some people are more equal than other people. Some people, my people, are more equal than those people who are lower down the attitude, right? And Buddhism came in a culture that valued the caste system, and so, the Buddha didn't like the caste system, and he didn't live by it, but he had to navigate it in certain ways so that the people didn't freak out, getting exposed to new ideas. So, this whole thing of what are my values? And what can I learn from other cultures? Because we can learn so much from other cultures and then shift our values somewhat, And like I said before, just what we consider polite, very different one culture to the next, what we consider being on time. We have one German nun here, and when I have been traveling in Europe, she came with me. And, I am a disciple of my teacher, but I don't start things at 11 o'clock at night. I try and, start them online. But, a couple of minutes late, that's okay, Well, I learned from her. You know, it says it starts at 9 o'clock. It starts at 9 o'clock, not 9 o'clock and 2 seconds. And it ends at, you know, this time and not any later. So, yeah. So I had to, you know, when in Rome, do as the Romans do, you know, learn to be on time. You know, but then you go to Singapore, and it's like, you know, COVID changed that a little bit. People are coming not quite as late as they used to, but it used to be, you know, by 15 minutes after the stated time, then most of the people were there. Yeah. So what time do you start? The time that it says, or 15 minutes later? Yeah. Okay. We had a wonderful skit. Do you want to tell them about the skit a few years ago? This was a beautiful skit. Yeah, meeting people at the airport.
Yeah, that is so. In different cultures, we say hi in different ways. And I was here with my sister, and there was by then another nun from Colombia too. So we were sharing that it's so common in Latin countries, maybe Gonzalo knows this too, that here in America you see somebody, you just say hi. Maybe in German it's even more distant, maybe just you nod your head or something. But in Latin countries it's so common, you start jumping all the way around, say hi, how are you, how are you doing? It's super exciting. And actually I have been joking with Venerable Damcho now because she's learning some words in Spanish. So I was telling her that it's so common when we say hi, we are not only saying good morning, but we're saying good morning, how are you? Did you sleep well? How are you doing?
Yeah. Yeah. But the skit was so great because they really were jumping up and down and hugging each other and dancing, and we were imagining this in the middle of the airport. Okay. So, yeah. But, okay, well, the culture I grew up in does a little bit of that, but not quite like that. But I could really enjoy it and see the beauty in it, yeah, of people really expressing happiness when they saw other people instead of, you're late. Yeah. What country are you from?
From Argentina.
Oh, Argentina.
Yeah,
Okay. Okay. Oh, you lost to the
World Cup.
Yeah. Oh, we better all cry. I heard they're very upset.
People are so upset in Argentina. I mean, we exaggerate the importance of the World Cup to a ridiculous extent in Argentina. That's very true. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about what she was saying because the kind of the broadcasters in Argentina, they shout the goals for like 2 minutes, you know, it's a very kind of effusive, you know. And
your goal.
the goal of Argentina.
Oh, yeah, but not the other teams.
The other team's goal, no, it's just very silent and very kind of sad experience. But now I was watching the World. I watched a little bit of the World Cup as I was in India because I'm living in India, and with an English broadcaster. And it was like I wanted to take a nap, kind of. It was a very different experience.
Yeah, yeah, it is. But I find that something beautiful, you know, to really learn how different cultures do it. And, you know, you go in a different culture and sometimes you feel really dumb. You know, you don't know how to do things. And, yeah. And people expect you to know how to do things, but you don't. So, yeah. So, anyway, while you're here, if we're doing things you don't understand, please ask. And people who are here, you know, it's part of our responsibility to help you know, new people come, show them where the prayer books are and the prayers and you know, all this kind of stuff, yeah. Okay, so speaking of prayers, yeah, maybe we should start, huh? Okay. Yeah, so we always start with taking refuge so that we are very clear about what tradition we're following. And we always start with bodhicitta so that we know why we're following the Buddha, why we're following that spiritual tradition. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create, by engaging in generosity and the other far-reaching practices, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create, by engaging in generosity and the other far-reaching practices, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create, by engaging in generosity and the other far-reaching practices, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. May all sentient beings have happiness and its causes. May all sentient beings be free of suffering and its causes. May all sentient beings never be separated from sorrowless bliss. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free of bias, attachment, and anger. So a couple of minutes of silence to let your mind settle down. And so let's reaffirm that our motivation for doing this course, our motivation for today, our motivation for the rest of our life is to direct our energies towards benefiting others, and specifically in the long term to work towards attaining full awakening so we can really benefit each being in the way that will really benefit them. And so we're attending teachings and having the EML program so that we can really learn the Buddhist teachings and how to enlarge our scope, enlarge our mind to think of the welfare of all living beings. Okay. So to look at the Buddha's life, as we know, every religion has some kind of, the birth of their, whoever it was, there was some kind of magical something. Yeah, you know, there was a virgin birth. Really? Yeah. In the Buddhist story, you know, he was born in the Kshatriya caste, which was the Brahmins were the top. The next one, the Kshatriyas, they were the warriors, the rulers, the governors. And so his father was, India was kind of getting into the idea of small republics at that time. So sometimes people say that his father was a king, so the Buddha was born as a prince. That's not exactly, you know, it. But his father was definitely the leader of this republic. Okay, and so he was born there. When he came out of the womb, yeah, he walked 7 steps, lifted his hand and said, "This is my last birth." Do any of your mothers tell you that that's what you did? Yeah, no. So, you know, this is, I think these, I always include these stories because they're part of the culture. And I don't think it's important whether they're true or not true, you know, because what they're trying to say is, you know, there was something special here, yeah. And interestingly, like Jesus, yeah, when after the Buddha was born, some soothsayers came and said to his parents, he's either going to be a great political leader, a great, you know, leader of the republic, or he's going to be a great spiritual leader. Okay, so, and I want to draw some parallels too about the way we grew up and you know, and the way the Buddha did. So when we were born, our parents had already had thoughts about what they wanted us to grow up to be. Yeah. I remember when one of my friends had a baby, and he said he was holding the child, infant, and he already had it planned out what school, what college he wanted his kid to go to, you know, and the kid doesn't even know how to talk, he's just born. But parents have those kinds of dreams for their kids, and they often want us to have what they couldn't have, whether we want it or not. They want us to be what somehow they wanted to be, but they didn't become that. Okay, but we're born, we don't know what these things are, but they're part of the stuff that is put in our mind when we're, you know, like this big, okay? For example, with myself, I knew, I mean, there was no question ever about me going to college, you know? No question, are you going to college or not? They had, you know, of course, our child is going to college. Yeah. And that worked out well for me because I liked learning. I was happy to go to college. But some people, college is not their thing. And then the parents, I don't know what's going on. Yeah. So I went to college. That was okay. Yeah. But there were other things I did that weren't what my parents wanted me to do. Just as the Buddha, his parents, wanted him to grow up to become a great leader of the Republic. Spiritual leader, because in ancient India, either you had to be born as a Brahmin to be a spiritual leader, or you were a wandering mendicant, okay, wearing rags, not living at home, not having a home, wandering around, living on alms, yeah? And the king, he worked hard to, get his kingship, and he wanted his son to carry it out, and that's how the Buddha grew up, He wasn't considered the Buddha at that time. It was really Siddhartha, yeah? Okay, so he grew up with that expectation. But what happened? Yeah, well, when you're a young prince, you have to excel at your studies, and you have to be a great athlete and do everything perfectly so that your parents can be proud of you and you can assume to be the ruler. Okay, so he did that too, He learned archery and, I don't know, maybe soccer. Yeah, maybe badminton, he fulfilled that, okay? So he was right on track going there. Okay, but then, and so he got married, he had a child, his parents are so happy, they have grandchildren now. And, but as he got older, he got really curious about the rest of the world because he lived in a gated community, okay? And nobody else was allowed in unless you passed through the gate and, they lifted the bar and you could drive in. So he didn't know much about life. So he got curious. So, as a young adult, he did what many of us may have done when we were teenagers, and you wanted to do something that your parents would not appreciate. What did you do? Well, you snuck out of the house, yeah, and you learned to keep your mouth shut or to tell just a little white lie. Mm-hmm. So they didn't know what you were really doing because they would have flipped out. Okay, so the Buddha talked to his charioteer and went into town, said, take me into town. The first thing, when he got into town, as the story goes, there were 4 messengers telling him about life. And the first messenger that he saw was somebody who was sick. In the palace, he had never seen sick people. So he asked his charioteer, what's that? Oh, it's somebody who's sick. What's that? Oh, well, the body, sometimes doesn't work very well, and you can't do what you used to do. Explain to him what sickness was. Oh, thought Siddhartha. Okay, that was that first trip. Okay. But he wasn't satisfied. He went back for a second trip. The charioteer took him back after a period of time. This time, what did he see? Old people. Oh my goodness, maybe they look like me. Well, not quite as bad as me. I'm getting there. But old people, he saw somebody bent over, well, I kind of am, with a cane. That one I told Venerable Jigme, not yet. She bought one for me. I told her, not yet. You know, walking on a cane, bent over, kind of mumbling, white hair, shuffling, instead of walking. What's that? Oh, that's an old person. What's that? You know, why do people become old like that? And the charioteer explained, this is the natural course of life, is you grow old. You know, will it happen to me, to everybody else? Yes. Yes, this is nature. Oh. He went back to the palace and thought about that. Went in a third time with this charioteer. This time, horror. There was a corpse lying in the street. Okay. Anybody been to an Indian train station? You sometimes see corpses in Indian train stations. I think it's not, when I went, my first trip to India was 1973, when many of you were in your previous life. And I saw corpses in the train station. I don't think, not so many now,
It hasn't happened.
But, you know, I saw that, you know, dead people lying there. So Siddhartha said, what's that? Oh, it's a dead person. What happened? He's not breathing. He can't talk. He can't move. Why? Well, that's the natural course of life. Whatever is born is going to die. Yeah. Me too? Yes? He went back to the palace. So he's really thinking now, okay, sickness, aging, death. None of them sound like great fun. He's wondering what's going on. He went in a fourth time. This time he saw a wandering mendicant. Okay? Somebody wearing rag robes. Yeah. Some of them with matted hair that was very long and braided or twisted, dirty, you know, with a bowl, going door to door on alms. What's that? Siddhartha asked. Yeah. Oh, it's a wandering mendicant. Huh? Why would somebody look like that and do that? Well, he's looking for a way out of aging, sickness, and death. Bing! He went back to the palace, a way after to get out of aging, sickness, and death. I want that. I want to do that. But I don't know the way to do it. Yeah, but these wandering mendicants must know the way. So he snuck out of the house one night. Yeah, and his charioteer took him into, away from the palace. He took off all of his finery, his, brocade and all the finery, yeah. and he put on rag robes. He took off all of his jewelry. And this is why we see the Buddhist statues, the earlobes are long, because as a prince, he wore jewelry, and it was heavy and it stretched his earlobes out. So he threw away the jewelry. Yeah, he cut his hair off. Yeah, he didn't go back to the palace, because what would have his parents and his wife have greeted him? Yeah. What have you done? Don't you know your heritage? You're supposed to take over the kingdom. I want more grandchildren. You know, what in the world are you doing? You can't do this. What are we going to say to all the other rulers when they brag about what their children are doing? I have to say, my kid, you know, is wandering around barefoot in rags. Oh, I can't face my friends in society. What are they going to think? Okay. Yeah, but he went anyway. Yeah. Think about, it brings up the whole issue of how your family, if you ordain, is going to, what they're going to think. And I'll tell you some stories later on from personal experience. So he started wandering, and he was looking for a teacher, because he realized you have to have a teacher, you know? Otherwise, you don't know what in the world you're doing. I mean, it's for any kind of skill in life. We need people to show us how to do it. You want to be a farmer, you have to have somebody teach you how to farm and when to plant and how to nourish the plants and everything, yeah? So he found one teacher, and this teacher was teaching serenity or shamatha meditation, how to gain single-pointed concentration, because that's what he thought was the path to liberation, the way out of samsara, the cycle of rebirth. Yeah, get deep concentration, and then when you die, you are born in the level of concentration in the God, or in the form realm or formless realms, according to the level you attained in your practice. So the Buddha was very bright. He achieved that, yeah. And he realized, yeah, okay, I have, you know, I can sit in meditation for a long time and, you know, concentrate, but this is not liberation. So, you know, by that time he had become so good that the teacher had said, you can take over from me, you know, and teach everybody. But he said, this is not liberation. And so he politely, you know, left that teacher. He found another one who was also teaching shamatha, serenity, but higher levels of meditative absorption. So he practiced that, thinking maybe this too is liberation. He attained that much higher state of deep concentration. And yet he realized that he still wasn't free of ignorance, anger, and attachment. Yeah, but that teacher too saw that he was very bright and offered him to lead the whole group. But he said, thank you, but no thank you. I want to find the way out of samsara. So he left. Then he met 5 friends, okay? And he went, you know, near Bodh Gaya and across a river from Bodh Gaya, and he practiced with these 5 friends. And these 5 friends had they had learned from their teacher to do very extreme ascetic practices because you had to tame your body. This body, you know, with all its desire and attachment and complaints and everything, you know, the more you pamper this body, the more you seek pleasure from this body, the more messed up you're going to get. So they practice real severe asceticism. Yeah? And they ate, so for a period of 6 years, the Buddha ate 1 grain of rice a day. That's what these guys did, you know. So they lost weight. And it said that when the Buddha was doing this practice, because they meditated all day, when he touched his belly button, he could feel his spine. That's how thin he was. And that's why you sometimes see statues of the Buddha looking like a skeleton. That's talking about that period of life. So he did that for 6 years, and he said, I'm still not awakened. Yeah. So he excused himself from them, but his 5 friends were not happy. It's like when you leave a gang, you know, or you lead your old drinking and drugging buddies. What, you cop out? You're leaving? You're going to go eat? You're going to McDonald's? You know, don't you know what, you know, you have to renounce the pleasures of this life to, you know? And I mean, they were not happy with him at all. He left anyway. Yeah, he sat under a tree. Yeah, and a woman who thought that she was coming to make an offering to the tree spirit who lived there, and thought that, you know, Siddhartha, sitting there, was the tree spirit. So she offered him, you know, sweet rice with raisins and nuts. And he ate it, and he had renewed energy. Yeah, he got up, he crossed a river. Crossing a river is always symbolic, isn't it? Yeah. Crossed the river, went and found a nice, beautiful Bodhi tree, and he sat beneath it, and he said, I'm not getting up until I attain awakening. So he's meditating. Yeah. So this is what we all think. Yeah. I'm just going to go and find myself a tree, find myself a cave, sit down. I'm going to get awakened like that. So that's what the Buddha thought too. So he sat down. What happens? Well, there's a guy called Mara. Okay, yeah. So Mara is a symbolic figure of our afflictions. Yeah. So Mara comes and says, you idiot, you know, what are you doing looking for awakening? Look around you. There is war. And the Buddha opened his eyes, and there are demons all around. You know, the country he's being invaded by, you know, I don't know but he's trying to meditate, and his mind is invaded by demons and weird people and soldiers and, you know, dropping atom bombs and charging ahead and, you know, all of that. I mean, their military budget had been approved. You know, the Democrats hadn't, you know, gotten in the way. So, you know, they were going after him. So what does he do? He meditates on love. Because he knows that hatred is never overcome by hatred. It's only overcome by love. So he meditates on love. Yeah. Well, all the bad guys couldn't keep on with their trip. Yeah, they turned into flower petals, and they just rained flower petals. Yeah. Oh, Buddha thought, got rid of that one. Kept on meditating. Then what happens? Oh, not the bad guys coming to get you. All the beautiful women, you know, with their jewels and slinky clothes and way of moving their bodies, to entice him. And they're all around. He can choose whichever one he wants. Okay. And these are Mara's daughters. Buddha recognized that. He said, okay, I could marry one of them. I could probably marry all of them. Because at that time, you could marry many, you had concubines. But you know what? Just one marital problem is enough of a headache. Yeah, I don't think I need a lot of them. And I don't think I even need that one either. Yeah, because when you have a romantic relationship, your energy goes into one person. Yeah, and you have to do what makes them happy, because if they aren't happy, they let you know that it's your fault. Yeah, and what is men's slogan? A happy life is a happy wife. So you have to make her happy. Yeah, yeah, and of course they don't even need to say that to women, because you were raised to just be the servant of your husband to start with. Yeah. So, he looks around, he says, no, this is not it either. Yeah. And so he meditated on the foulness of the body. All these beautiful, seductive women turned into old hags. Yeah. And they slunk away. Okay. So then he kept meditating, and, at dawn, which is always, symbolic, he vanquished all of the defilements in his mind stream and attained full awakening. He got up from that meditation afterwards and said, okay, now what do I do? Yeah, I want to share what I've realized with others. But what I think now, what I realized, is not what the people in this world think. It's not at all. They're looking for money, status, sex, everything. But that's not what enlightenment is. Who is going to understand what I just realized? So he stays around Bogai. He walks around and wondering what to do. The gods in heaven, Brahma, Indra, all the gods, saw him. These gods are not liberated beings. They're just in the upper realms. They saw, how he was perplexed. And again, this story is so symbolic of many things. So the gods appear before Siddhartha, who's now the Buddha, and say, there are beings with little dust in their eyes. Yeah. They will understand. You just have to find them. So he thought, okay, who could that be? So he thought of his first two teachers. Yeah. By that time he had psychic powers. He realized that those two teachers had died. he couldn't go to them and teach them. So then he thought, oh, my 5 friends. So he started walking to Sarnath. Yeah, he could figure out by his super knowledge ability where the 5 friends were. So he walked to where they were. So they were, sitting there, still, eating 1 grain of rice a day. And they saw him coming. And what did they say? Oh, there's that cop-out. Yeah. That cop-out, that quitter, that guy who, just starts something. Yeah. The lowest of the low IQ guy. Yeah. Here's that low IQ guy who's not going to amount to anything. Yeah. So when he comes, we're not offering anything to him. We're going to give him the cold shoulder. So the Buddha just kept walking. He reaches them. Yeah. The Buddha has a presence. Have you ever been around people who have a presence? Yeah. Buddha has a presence. He has a vibe. Yeah. Yeah. So these guys picked up on the Buddha's vibe. And automatically, without thinking, they offered him a seat. They gave him water to drink. They offered him a grain of rice. Or actually, we're celebrating, you get 2 grains. Yeah. And he started to teach them, and one of them attained stream entry. He realized selflessness. And the others said, he's got something here. And they became his disciples. And thus began the Sangha. So you had the Buddha realizing the Dharma, and then the Sangha. Okay, so how does this relate to our life? Yeah, if you look back, Buddha's parents had expectations of him. Our parents have expectations of us. Yeah, anybody here live up to their parents' expectations? Yeah, kind of, yeah. Anybody else? Yeah. Yeah. Well, from my side, I finished college. Great. I got married. Nice boy. Great. Yeah. And then, okay. But, so some of us met our parents' expectations to a certain degree, and then, what are you doing here? Yeah. Did you tell your parents where you were going for 2 weeks? What did they say? Yeah, your dad had been here. That's nice. I'm really glad he came. Yeah. And your mom and dad came. But your dad at the beginning was not overjoyed, was he? Not at all. Yeah. Yeah. Your parents were not so happy, but they've adjusted. Yeah. More or less. Yeah. I met your parents. I met your dad in Singapore.
I only told them when I was at the airport flying here.
Yeah. You told them at the airport. Good. Yeah. So I won't tell you what my parents said. But, it's the same kind of thing, yeah. Then when you ordain, what do your parents say?
My mom said that me ordaining would be like me dying, and that she would lose me.
Yeah.
I was like, that's not entirely wrong, but it's not right either.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But that's the way parents feel, you know. My parents, you know, I often think we should start a support group for parents of ordained Buddhist kids. Yeah. But we have to let them know that they're not losing us. We're still their child. We still appreciate everything they did for us. Yeah. I mean, they raised us to be reasonable people. They gave us an education. They taught us to talk. We're alive because, you know, we used to do all sorts of dangerous things as infants, and they pulled us out of it. So, you know, to let your parents know that you really appreciate what they've done. And what you're exploring is build upon what they taught you, because they gave us a good ethical foundation, or somewhat good ethical foundation. You know, I mean, we might have picked up some of their habits of things, yeah. But to tell them, you know, we're building on what you taught us, and we appreciate everything you did, and we're still your kid, yeah. We aren't going to live at home anymore. We aren't going to go on cruises to the Mediterranean with the family, or have family meals every Sunday night. You know, we're not going to come home for Christmas or whatever holiday you celebrate, okay? But we love you, and, you know, we're still your child, and we will come and visit, and you are more than welcome to come to the monastery, yeah? And, you know, and that can really work wonders, yeah? And also, you know, just the thing of, you know, the Buddha, when or Siddhartha, when he went, seeing the old person, the sick person, the old person, the dead person. We had some life experience, yeah, and we've seen some unpleasant things that probably turned our mind towards thinking, what's the meaning of my life? What's the purpose of my life? Yeah. Our parents didn't necessarily ask those questions. Okay, you people are another generation from me, but, you know, my parents grew up during the Depression. They grew up during World War II. People didn't have the time or the luxury then to think about what is the meaning of my life. They were just trying to stay alive. Yeah. How many of you have parents who were in the military? Who maybe fought? Wow. Anybody fought in Vietnam? Yeah. That's going to make a difference. Yeah. Did they talk about their experiences in Nam? No.
Not in Vietnam. We're Desert Storm and Desert Shield.
What? Desert Shield, yeah. Did he talk about it?
Yeah, sometimes.
Sometimes. It's hard to get them to talk about stuff, you know. Or if they talk about World War II, the culture, oh, World War II, the people who grew up and fought, they destroyed fascism, you know. They fought for liberty. But a lot of people died, and a lot of people got killed. Yeah. And so, you know, you learn from what your parents tell you about what they went through, and you pick up what they didn't tell you. Like, why when they talk about the past, don't they talk about that period in their life? You know, or like for me with my grandparents, because my grandparents were immigrants to this country. They were from Eastern Europe, Russia. They were from a persecuted group. Yeah, they came here as refugees seeking a better life. Yeah. And I asked my grandma one time she always called it the old country. Yeah, I had to figure out what the old country meant, because it was actually several different countries now, but not at that time. Anyway, so I said, what was it like growing up then in the old country? And her response was, I don't want to talk about it. It was too awful. Ding, I want to learn about it. Yeah. 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 As soon as, parents don't want you to know something, you got to find out a way to learn about it. So, yeah, so I read up on that, and I started to learn about that. But, yeah, we pick these things up from our parents, what they went through. Yeah. So my parents' generation, yeah, as they were the first people born in America, what's the duty of the first generation born in a new country? To make it good, to get the family going in a prosperous direction where they have enough food, where they don't have to go through what you went through. Yeah, so my parents were fixed on the American dream, and they worked very hard to get it. Yeah, and my generation we were born post-war, grew up when the economy was good, the soldiers had come home, they got married, they were having kids, everything looked up. So my generation grew up with all, because our parents worked very hard, with what they didn't have. But my generation was not like, oh, wonderful, yeah, let's go on a cruise, Mom and Dad. It was like, okay, we got all this, so what? There's a war going on, and our friends are being drafted to go fight in that war, and some of them are coming back in body bags. Yeah, why are we fighting a war on the other side of the world? For what purpose? Yeah, why are we killing people? And in those days, they had the press embedded with the troops. Nowadays, they don't want people to see what actually is going on. It's sanitized. But at that time, we got pictures of what was going on in Vietnam. And maybe I don't know if you've seen, there was a very famous picture of a little girl who had just been hit by napalm, naked, running down the street, her hands out, screaming. What are we doing in that country to the people there, And so my generation, the flower children, yeah, we want flowers, not bombs, yeah. And it was the drug generation. And it was the if it feels good, do it. Yeah, make love, not war generation. Yeah, and so there was really a lot of rebellion. Not everybody, but a good chunk. I grew up in California. That tells it. That tells the whole story. I didn't live in San Francisco, but still California. Okay, so we come in with certain thoughts, certain experiences, and when you hear, like when I got to the first meditation course I went to, because I had always wondered, as most kids do, you have a grandparent that died, yeah, and you wonder, oh, what's death? Do any of you remember that experience of somebody dying? And like, what does that mean? And where where I grew up, as, you know, get to another community, you drove on the road, and there was a cemetery. And I remember asking my parents, what's a cemetery? Yeah, is it a park? It's very green. Yeah. Well, that's where they bury dead people. What's a dead person? Silence. I know something's going on. A dead person goes to sleep for a very long time. Yeah. So when Grandma died, she went to sleep for a long time. Yeah. Am I gonna die? Yeah. And my brother was 3 years younger than me. Am I gonna die before him because I'm older? You know, you start thinking about those things as a kid. And the fact that adults do not want to talk about something, then you know something's up. Yeah, it's like, do you remember when your parents went into the bedroom and whispered? Yeah. What are they talking about? Yeah. Or if your parents were from another culture, they start speaking in their native language, which you don't know. Oh, yeah. So, you know, we, like the Buddha, we come in wondering, what is my life all about? Yeah. As terms of what I read in the paper about the generations, I don't know if it's, you know, there's all these letters, you know, the millenniums. It's now Generation Z, you know, who can't seem to get their head out of a screen. But, you know, the younger generation is all worried about the economy and how are you going to afford a house? Yeah, that's what I read in the paper anyway. How are we going to afford our own home? The economy isn't good enough, and AI is going to lay us all up. And I'm looking, you're just out of school. Why in the world do you want to buy your own home? Yeah? You should go out and travel and learn about life. Why do you want a home? Because then you have to pay taxes, you have to pay mortgage payments, you know. Well, we want to raise a family. But what I read about the younger generation, they don't necessarily, you know, they're not having enough kids. Yeah, that's why J.D. Vance, you know, they just had their 4th kid. We're going to repopulate America because the economy needs more children to support all the old fogies who won't die and leave their wealth to us. Yeah. So, yeah, it's kind of, you know, yeah, won't you guys knock off already? We're tired of dealing with you. We love you, but you have dementia. You're talking nonsense. Yeah, how many of you have parents with dementia? Just one person. Yeah. Well, either they're going to die first or they'll probably get dementia. Yeah. And that is a real role reversal for them and for you, you know, because they used to take care of us. Now we have to take care of them. They used to change our diaper. Now we have to change their diaper. but they're proud they don't want to have a diaper. Yeah, so I was not living with my parents at that time. My sister was living with them. So she had to deal with a dad not wearing a diaper and being in the grocery store and having an accident. You know, but my dad would let my sister change his diaper. He wouldn't let me. Yeah, somehow I was the oldest. Yeah, my sister was the youngest. She, you know, it's kind of her job. But he wouldn't let me help him get in the car. But if my friends came to visit, he would let my friends help him get in the car. Yeah, there's a certain kind of pride when you're old, you know, that you don't want your kids to see you like this, because you have some idea, you know, physically you're not the same. Yeah, mentally you're sure that you know everything when you're old. Yes, yes. My dad, my mama was interesting. She didn't get dementia, but she was more of a physical wreck than my dad was. But Dad, yeah, bless his heart, you know, well, even they don't have dementia. What happens when they're old enough to not be driving and you have to say, give me the keys? Ooh, they don't like that. My mom gave the keys over, that's okay, yeah. Dad, he was the driver in the family, yeah. He wanted the independence of being able to get in the car and go where he wants, when he wants to go there, you know. And then you have to deal with that. Yeah, the Buddha left that, you know, yeah, but you'll have to deal with it, or they die first. Yeah. How many of you have both parents who are still alive? Okay, one parent still alive? Yeah. No parents? Yeah. Yeah. So, you know, there's lots of things that make us think of life, about life and our purpose, but they're not necessarily the things that our parents thought about. Yeah, so you get that reaction of, what are you doing? You know, you graduated from whatever, you know, or you had a good job, you were making good money. What are you doing? Yeah. And what am I going to tell my friends? Yeah. They can see your brother and your sister have kids. I have a little, you know, all the pictures of the families. And on the, you know, the little thing that where they put the pictures and it changes the picture every, you know, minute or something, you know, what, yeah. So yeah, all the kids and their families, and it's so nice. What do you look like? Yeah, and how can we put a picture of you? Yeah, and what are we gonna tell our friends? This person's daughter is a lawyer. That person's daughter is a doctor. That person's daughter, you know, has a corner office. What are we going to tell them about you? Yeah, that you shaved your head, you wear the same clothes every day, and you went to live in a country that doesn't even have flush toilets. Yeah. Get ready. Although I must say, when your parents are here, yeah, they mellowed out from visiting here, didn't they? Yeah, your dad mellowed out. I heard he wants to come back. Good. Yeah, and your dad has come back, and your mom wants to move here. Yeah, how long was she just here? Just
5 full days.
That's all? It seemed like a long time. I didn't have a chance to say goodbye to her. Please tell her goodbye. But yeah, she just was great here. Fit in. Yeah. So I don't know what your dad thought about it, but yeah.
He was playing golf.
Yeah, he was able to play golf and not have her ask, where are you going? Yeah. But there's certain parallels with the Buddha's life. Okay. Uh-oh. The German nun isn't here. I'm over time.
There's a German here.
You're German?
Yeah.
Really? You grew up in Germany? Why aren't you cutting me off and telling me to be quiet?
I'm a bit of a liberal.
Oh, good. Good. Will you talk to Venerable Jampa? Yeah. So, it was good. Yeah, she also tells me, when I have stuff caught in my teeth, and, all these kinds of things. Yeah. Yeah, well, you have to have assistants who help you, and, they act like your mother, Yeah, Venerable Damchu, she first used to iron my shirts, my clothes, my robes. I said, what are you doing? I'm ironing your clothes. What? Why are you ironing my robes? It's a waste of time. Well, she used to have a job working for, she went to school here, so she had to do a certain job when she went back to Singapore because they paid for her education. So she was working for some government offices. Well, the assistant of a government officer, he had to look good, and, I said, look, ironing is against my religion. Yeah, I don't do it. It is wash and wear as far as I'm concerned. Yeah, but that was her idea, and she felt responsible for me looking good. I didn't feel that responsibility. Yeah. I just showed up as I am, So, you navigate these kinds of things. Okay, so we better stop. Yeah, I talked through at least half of the break. So why don't we do a quick dedication, and then we'll take a break, and then we'll come back and have a discussion, okay? So I'm sure you will meditate, memorize the dedication verse very quickly, because we say it a lot. Due to this merit, may we soon attain the awakened state of Guru Buddha, that we may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their suffering. May the precious Bodhi mind, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore.